It was a cold October evening when Thomas McAllister found himself driving through a remote countryside road he didn't even remember turning onto. The sun had just set, drowning the landscape in a heavy, greyish dusk. His GPS flickered nervously, recalculating, while his hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. He cursed under his breath. He wasn't supposed to be here. He was on his way back from a business meeting, craving only the comfort of his bed. But this road, it felt wrong, as if the trees leaned in too close, whispering secrets to each other that he wasn't meant to hear. Just as the creeping unease took root in his chest, he noticed something ahead. Dim lanterns glowed in the distance, arranged in a perfect circle in the open field just beyond the road. Thomas slowed the car, his curiosity battling his better judgment. He couldn't help but stare. Silhouettes moved slowly around the lights. Hooded figures. The air turned colder, his breath fogging up the windshield. Against every instinct screaming at him to keep driving, Thomas pulled over. He sat frozen, heart pounding. What the hell was this? Some rural gathering? A cult? Before he could decide, an old man suddenly appeared beside his window, knocking twice. Thomas jumped, gasping. The man wore a tattered grey cloak, face pale and expressionless. "You shouldn't be here, son," the man rasped. "But since you are, you might as well witness." Thomas should have driven away. He should have ignored the old man. But something in those milky eyes gripped him. There was a strange pull, like invisible hands dragging him out of the car. Shivering, he followed the man toward the circle of lanterns. The figures made no sound. Their heads turned as he approached, and Thomas felt their collective gaze sink into his bones. "We gather," the old man began, his voice impossibly loud against the still night, "as we have always gathered, to remember, to feed the earth that gives and takes." Thomas's throat went dry. He turned to leave, but the circle had closed. The way back was gone. The hooded figures parted slightly, revealing a hole in the ground. It wasn't there a moment ago. Thomas was sure of it. A crude, circular pit, lined with rocks and old, withered roots, protruding like skeletal hands. From its depths came a sound, a slow, deliberate breathing. Not the wind, not an animal. Something was down there, watching. The old man gestured toward the pit. "Every cycle we offer, we remember what was buried here, long before our fathers' fathers. You see, this land, it remembers." Thomas shook his head, voice breaking. I don't belong here. I'm just lost." A brittle laugh escaped the old man's throat. "We're all lost, son. That's why you found the road. It only appears to the lost." A cold hand gripped Thomas's wrist, pulling him forward. "You're the outsider. Tonight, the earth takes from you." Suddenly, a sack was pulled open by another hooded figure, and what came out made Thomas's stomach lurch. Bones. Human bones. Yellowed and brittle. They were tossed into the pit carelessly, disappearing into the dark. Then the chanting began, low, guttural, like the earth itself was groaning. Thomas's heart pounded so loud he could barely hear himself think. He staggered backward, but unseen hands pushed him forward. "Witness," the old man hissed. "Witness or be part of it." The ground trembled. Thomas swore he saw the dirt move, like it was breathing. Then slowly, a shape began to rise from the pit. Pale, emaciated arms clawed their way upward, and a face appeared. Hollow eyes, wide and black, fixed straight on Thomas. It grinned. Thomas screamed, stumbling back. "What the hell is that?" "What you fed," the old man replied simply. "What we always feed. The hunger never stops." The figure fully emerged, frail but impossibly fast. It circled the group, sniffing the air like a feral dog. The hooded figures remained motionless, their heads bowed. But the creature, it wanted Thomas. Its eyes bore into him with a knowing hunger, as if it could taste his fear. "No!" Thomas roared, fighting the invisible grip pulling him toward the pit. "You can't do this!" The old man's face twisted into something dark. "It's not us. It's the land. The land chooses." In desperation, Thomas lunged toward the nearest figure, tearing back the hood. What he saw froze his blood. The face was waxy, expressionless, and eyeless. Empty sockets stared back at him, a corpse, every figure dead. Thomas screamed, his body trembling uncontrollably. "You're all dead." The old man laughed. "We serve, even in death." The creature lunged, but instead of attacking, it stopped inches from Thomas. Its head tilted, confused. The old man nodded. "You fought. Rare. The land sees you. A new servant." The next thing Thomas remembered was waking up in his car, engine idling, dawn breaking on the horizon. He was shaking, drenched in sweat. No sign of the field, no lanterns, no pit, just empty, endless road. He gasped, checking his body. No wounds, no marks. Was it a dream? A nightmare? Then he looked at his hands. Dirt. Under his nails. Dark, caked earth. His chest tightened. Weeks passed. Every night, Thomas heard it, breathing, deep beneath his house. Sometimes he saw the dirt floor of his basement shift, as if something was just beneath the surface, waiting, hungry. And every night, in his dreams, he saw the old man. "We gather soon," the voice whispered. "The land remembers." I remember the first time I heard about the hill. Nothing more than a drunken tale from a man twice my age at the corner of an old village tavern, a remote place called Hallowridge, tucked between decaying woods and forgotten hills. He spoke with trembling lips, his voice cracking as if dredging up a memory he wished had stayed buried. "You don't go there. Not in March. Not during the new moon. There's something. They do something up there." It sounded absurd then. A local legend exaggerated over years of loneliness and alcohol. But curiosity, that stubborn itch, had its claws in me. 2 months later, I found myself driving toward that village, the road narrowing with every mile, the trees pressing closer as if trying to push me back. I remember my palms sweating, despite the cold, and that irrational but growing sense that I was being watched long before I even reached the place. Every few miles, I felt the urge to turn back, but it was like something unseen kept pushing me forward. The villagers had eyes that didn't trust outsiders, weathered faces, tight lips, and that eerie stillness that made every whispered conversation sound like a warning. When I asked about the hill, a man nearly spat his beer. "Forget it. Nothing there but rocks and old bones." But his darting eyes betrayed the lie. The room grew tense, as if my question had pulled a cold draft through the walls. No one else dared speak after that. That night, unable to sleep, I wandered outside the inn. The air was unnaturally still, the sky too black. The moon gone as if swallowed by the clouds. I could feel it then, a presence, heavy and suffocating, watching me from the treetops. Branches creaked above, but there was no wind. I shivered and hurried back inside, catching a glimpse of the innkeeper staring at me through the dark hallway, his expression unreadable. By the next evening, the unease had settled deep in my bones. I overheard something that made my blood run cold. Two old women, hunched in a shadowed corner, whispering about the upcoming night. It falls perfect this year. The moon, the date, they must feed it. The words echoed in my mind long after they left the room. I tried to reason with myself, telling myself it was superstition, but a gnawing voice in my head insisted it was something more, something real. That night, around 2 a.m., driven by a mixture of dread and compulsion, I grabbed my flashlight and left. The hill loomed black against the night sky. No stars, no moon, just a gaping darkness pulling at me like a void. The path was old, stones slick with moss. I slipped twice, heart pounding, breath shallow. But then I heard it, low murmurs, chanting. My body froze. There was no mistaking it. Voices, dozens of them, weaving a hymn that made my stomach turn. The sound was ancient, guttural, and carried a weight that made my knees buckle. I followed the sound like a man possessed, until the trees opened up, revealing a hollow lit by dozens of candles. The air smelled of earth, blood, and something fouler, something decayed. I felt bile rise in my throat. My mind screamed to run, but my legs betrayed me. They were there, figures in dark robes, faces hidden, a circle of them. In the center, something I still struggle to describe. It was human once. Tied, gagged, eyes wide with terror. Their chants rose, trembling the very ground beneath my feet. I could see the victim's chest heaving, their body trembling, as if every muscle screamed for help. The surrounding darkness seemed alive, moving, shifting unnaturally. I stumbled, and one of them turned. A pale face, eyes black as tar. The chant faltered. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered, and it felt like the air was sucked out of my lungs. Before I could move, they resumed. A blade flashed, and my scream died in my throat as blood sprayed, steaming in the cold air. The sacrifice was not clean. The blade sawed, not cut. The muffled screams curdled my blood. I watched in horror as some shadow detached from the darkness, seeped toward the offering. It moved unnaturally, like smoke with purpose. The figure convulsed as the shadow engulfed it. Then, silence. I wanted to run, but my body locked. I heard whispers, but they weren't from the robed figures. They came from the darkness itself, crawling into my ears. "You saw. You are marked." My vision blurred. Shapes danced at the edge of my sight, twisting, grinning. I don't know how I got back. Branches tore at me. Unseen hands clawed at my jacket. The chanting faded but seared into my mind. I crashed through the woods, sobbing until I saw the dim lights of the inn. Inside, I collapsed. The innkeeper's face paled, then hardened. "You were never there. Do you hear me? You saw nothing." He gripped my arm so hard it bruised. "Pray it forgets you." I barely slept. Every creak, every shadow made my skin crawl. I felt eyes on me all night, even with the curtains drawn. At dawn, I forced myself out. The hill looked ordinary. No blood, no candles, no signs of anything. But the villagers, they looked at me differently. Pity? Fear? Hatred? I couldn't tell. None of them would meet my gaze. I packed my things, drove until the gas tank nearly dried up. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. Every shadow felt too deep. Every reflection carried eyes that weren't mine. I never went back. But every year, around March, I feel it. That pull. And sometimes, in dreams, I hear the chant. I wake up gasping, certain that whatever they fed that night, it still remembers me. And worse, it waits. There are moments in life when your gut screams at you to turn around, yet somehow you ignore it. That night, Daniel Hart ignored his gut. The invitation had come in a plain white envelope. No return address, just a black wax seal stamped with a symbol he didn't recognize. Witness the unveiling, the paper read. An old college friend, Martin, had sent it, or so the shaky handwriting claimed. Daniel hadn't heard from Martin in over 15 years. Not since those unsettling nights back in university when Martin became obsessed with ancient rites and forbidden ceremonies. Daniel should have tossed the invite. Instead, curiosity dug its claws in. The drive took him far outside the city, down roads where the trees pressed in like silent witnesses. It wasn't until his GPS lost signal that Daniel realized how isolated he'd become. Still, he pressed on, the air growing heavier as the forest swallowed him. By the time he arrived at the decrepit mansion, his heart was hammering in his chest. Several other cars were parked outside, their owners nowhere in sight. He hesitated at the rusted gate, taking a shaky breath. "It's just Martin, probably a prank," he whispered, forcing a nervous chuckle. But even then, a cold sweat crept down his spine. Inside, the mansion smelled of mildew and something faintly metallic. Candles lined the grand hallway, their flickering light creating dancing shadows that seemed to reach out as Daniel passed. He wasn't alone. A few other guests lingered, their eyes hollow, their smiles forced. It didn't take long for Daniel to realize no one knew exactly why they were there. Martin appeared like a ghost from the darkened staircase, thinner, paler than Daniel remembered. "I'm so glad you came," he rasped, pulling Daniel into a brittle embrace. His eyes were wild, darting nervously. "It's tonight, Danny. I've waited years for this." Daniel wanted to ask what this was, but a strange reverence in the air kept him silent. Instead, he followed Martin deeper into the mansion, each step sinking into thick, dusty carpets. They gathered in a circular chamber below the mansion, the walls lined with symbols Daniel couldn't read. The air smelled of old blood. A stone altar sat at the center, dark stains hinting at its past purpose. Daniel's stomach twisted as Martin began handing out black robes. "It's just a reenactment," Daniel tried to reason. "Nothing serious." But every instinct screamed otherwise. Martin's voice echoed as he spoke of the ritual, of unseen forces waiting in the dark. The group repeated chants Daniel didn't understand, their voices trembling yet compelled. With each word, the air thickened, a pressure building so intense Daniel felt his ears pop. He glanced around. Some were sweating, others shivering uncontrollably, yet no one dared leave. The climax came when Martin pulled a struggling man from the shadows, someone Daniel hadn't noticed among them. A necessary sacrifice, Martin whispered almost apologetically. The man's eyes were wide with terror, muffled screams breaking through the gag. Daniel stood frozen, heart racing, unable to speak. "This is insane," someone finally shouted, their voice cracking. But Martin ignored it, chanting louder, the others reluctantly following. Daniel's body trembled as he watched the blade rise, gleaming cold in candlelight. He couldn't move, couldn't look away. The knife came down. Daniel didn't remember screaming, but his throat burned. The chamber pulsed, shadows twisting unnaturally. The sacrifice was complete, and Martin's face glowed with eerie satisfaction. "It's done. We're free," he whispered, though Daniel had no idea what he meant. As the others filed out, pale and silent, Daniel realized he was crying. He stumbled outside, gasping for air. The night suddenly too quiet. The sky seemed wrong, too dark, too vast. In the distance, Daniel could swear he saw figures watching from between the trees. He didn't wait to find out. Daniel drove like a madman, the road twisting endlessly. His hands trembled on the wheel, his mind racing. What had he just witnessed? He tried calling the police, but there was no signal, just static. The road seemed unfamiliar, like it had changed behind him. Panic clawed at his chest. Eventually, headlights appeared. Relief flooded him until he realized it was a black car. Windows tinted so dark it felt like staring into the void. It followed him, matching his speed, never overtaking, never slowing. Desperate, Daniel took random turns until the car vanished. He never saw who was inside. When Daniel finally made it home, the world felt different. Colors muted, sounds distant. He locked every door, every window, but couldn't shake the feeling he'd brought something back with him. That night, he dreamt of the ritual, of Martin's eyes glowing in the dark, of the man's final silent scream. Morning brought no relief. The news spoke of a missing person, matching the man from the ritual. No one had heard of Martin. No mansion existed where Daniel swore it had been. He returned to the area, but the road ended at an overgrown field. No tracks, no mansion, just emptiness. Weeks passed, but Daniel was never the same. He avoided mirrors, too often catching glimpses of movement that wasn't his own. Whispers filled the silence of his home, his name spoken from unseen mouths. Sleep became impossible. Every night he woke gasping, heart racing, shadows lingering too long. One night Daniel found the black envelope on his kitchen table. No windows had been opened, no doors breached. The same wax seal stared back at him. With trembling hands, he opened it. "One final witness required," it read. The phone rang once, and Daniel knew